So we are spending millions and millions on buying very exotic phones, and we are using only barely 5% of what the phone can achieve. So our hope and our prayer is that we want the facility to be available. There are 250 laptops in this building that you will see, 250. Now, this is the project that Afe Babalola funded, because when I told him this is what I would like to do. Distinguished guests, since we came on board, this administration has placed much emphasis on ICT and other related disciplines so as to ensure that our young boys and girls are not left out in this area of study, which is now very globally. We have equipped our educational institutions with the computers and other ICT gadgets with the ability to ensure that our children become computer literate right from basic education level.
We'll take a short break now and return for our conversation for tonight. Please stay with us, everyone.
The Renewed Hope Initiative RHI presents the RHI Green Nigeria Challenge. Go green today for a greener tomorrow. This national competition is in 3 categories. The household category is a tree planting competition amongst 11 frontline states in northern Nigeria. Each participating household in Adamawa, Borno, Bauchi, Gombe, Jigawa, Kano, Katsina, Kebbi, Sokoto, Yobe and Zamfara states will plant a minimum of 1 tree to qualify, with a video evidence of before and after the tree planting exercise. 20 million naira will be awarded to the best household. Submission deadline is 20th December 2026. Community category will see local governments, local communities, schools and NGOs reclaim and transform degraded or abandoned areas such as dump sites, landfills, parks and their likes into green, vibrant gardens, parks and eco-friendly spaces. 50 million naira will be awarded to the overall best community group. Deadline for submission is 15th July 2026. States category will have all states of the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, excluding Enugu State, have a chance to address the growing threats to environmental sustainability and cleanliness. States will be judged based on the number of trees planted on major roads and inner streets and how clean they are. 100 million naira will be awarded to the best performing state. Already, Enugu State has 100 million naira for being RHI's model green state due to its greenery and cleanliness. Video evidence must be submitted by participating states on or before 20th December 2026. All entries must be directed to RHI Office, State House, Abuja, or email rhi.greenchallenge@statehouse.gov.ng. RHI Green Nigeria Challenge. Go green today for a greener tomorrow.
Everybody in the education sector, I want to thank you for all the support you've given us in the last almost 2 years. And the country, where education sector is witnessing an amazing transformation. We're seeing the results already. But more importantly, I want to wish everyone happy 65th anniversary. Nigeria has gone a long way. We have a president today that is helping us imagine the potentials, the opportunities in this country. Nigeria is a good country. The opportunities, the abundance of opportunities in this country. Let's think more positive about Nigeria and less negativity. We have a good country and we have a president, amazing president in the person of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that is committed to ensuring that this country is put on the path of sustainability 10 years from now, decade from now, and into eternity. We thank Mr. President. Congratulations, everyone. Happy 65th Independence Anniversary.
Thank you for staying with us, everyone. As Nigeria marks 65 years of independence, conversations about national progress naturally turn to critical sectors and few as essential, yet often overlooked, as electricity access in our rural communities. And despite decades of development efforts, millions of Nigerians in rural areas still live without reliable power, affecting education, healthcare, small businesses, and overall quality of life. Today, we shine a spotlight on the nation's rural electrification drive, what has been achieved, what remains to be done, and how government agencies are working to close the energy access gap. Abba Liu is the Managing Director of the Rural Electrification Agency. He joins me again on this very important day. His agency is tasked with powering the empowered and unlocking the full potential of our rural communities. Mr. Liu, good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on Politics Tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. So it's a great day for us all as Nigerians. We're celebrating 65 years of Nigerians' independence, and hopefully one day our electricity sector also gains freedom from all of the challenges bedeviling it. So, I listened to Mr. President this morning. Clearly shows that his distrust about the situation. It says we do not have enough electricity to power our industries and homes today, or the resources to repair our deteriorating roads, build seaports, railways, and international airports comparable to the best in the world, because we failed to make the necessary investments decades ago. So to begin this conversation, Mr. Aliyu, how would you assess Nigeria's progress in rural electrification over the last 65 years?
Thank you very much for having me. The rural electrification, or addressing the electricity access challenge that is being faced by Nigeria, has tremendously recorded progress. For the first time, I would like to put it on record, this is the first government that had designed a structured means of addressing electricity access challenge in the country. Of course, we agree that the country has the highest number of people without this access. But before now, the quest to address this access was being done on an ad hoc basis. There's no any structured means of addressing it. When Mr. President came in, one of the first things he did in the power sector was the approval he granted for the distributed access through renewable energy scale-up project. The only structured means of addressing electricity access challenge in the country, targeting 17.5 million Nigerians by deploying 1,350 mini grids, and at the same time also deploying over 12 million solar home systems across the country. And to show you, after approving that project and getting it designed, already implementation had started. To date, we have signed grant agreement with developers, and we are currently deploying 254 isolated mini grids across the country, in different parts of the country. We are also working on deploying 42 interconnected mini grids that will inject 188.4 megawatts of electricity in different parts of the country. We also have signed a grant agreement with companies that are deploying solar home systems, about 7 of them, with a total capacity quantity of over 1 million, which is much more than what we deployed under the previous program. So you can see the way this present government is taking this challenge of addressing the electricity, providing the financing. We have the $750 million World Bank financing that is targeting the 17.5 million Nigerians. And the Honorable Minister recently was in Japan, where he concluded an arrangement for additional co-financing of 190 million that would target additional 1,830,000 Nigerians to be provided with electricity using isolated and interconnected mini grids. We are also in discussion with French development for additional funding of about 180 million euro also that would be a co-financing for the DES project. Even beyond that, the federal government also in the year in, year out budget, this present government had budgeted funding for rural electrification, the biggest funding ever in the history of rural electrification agency for deployment of this renewable infrastructure to address the electricity access challenge. It is on record that in 2025 budget, the federal government provided 100 billion naira under the
I do
National
apologize
Public
that
Sector
I may have to come in here. I don't want to talk about funding now because I expect that we spend some minutes on that, because the feedback I got was that some Nigerians are still confused about funding and how you intend to carry out all of these initiatives and goals from the last conversation we had. But I wonder to, because I tried, when we started this conversation, I tried to describe your mandate to Nigerians. I know I tried, but I don't want to score myself. But for Nigerians to hear from the horse's mouth, I want you to describe the mandate and your vision for the agency, and how has that mission evolved under your leadership?
Yeah, so the mandate of Rural Electrification Agency is very clear. We are created to address the electricity access challenge, to provide electricity for communities that do not have this access completely. And we have the second level of the mandate. This is to provide reliability for communities that do not have reliability. These are the communities that enjoy less than 4 hours of electricity. So in those areas also we intervene and provide this reliability. Then the third access mandate also, it's for us to intervene in some critical sectors of the Nigerian economy. Basically, we intervene in agriculture to ensure that we provide electricity that will enhance production of agricultural produce and reduce post-harvest losses. We also intervene in education, critical government institutions that within these areas that maybe there's lack of reliability or lack of access, we intervene and provide them also with this. The same thing in the health sector. So these are the key mandate of Rural Electrification Agency.
Right.
And so our strategy has always been very clear. Since we have this large number of people without electricity access, and with this our mandate, we now reorient the entire strategy of Rural Electrification Agency to now leverage on this large number of people without access to even position Nigeria to be the renewable hub of Africa. We are not seeing this 80-something million people that are without access as a challenge. We are seeing them as an opportunity, as a market to provide the electricity, to create localization, to create manufacturing, to create jobs, to train. And that is why Rural Electrification Agency came up with 6 clear strategies. One is the funding drive. That is because for us to address the access or create the reliability, we must have adequate funding to be able to do that. But also the second level of it is to use the funding to incentivize the private sector, because the government alone cannot address this. So why shouldn't we invite the private sector to leverage on our funding to create a blended financing that would enable us to address the access challenge and expand the funding portfolio that we have? So that's the first strategy. The second strategy is to design operational framework. So to enable us be focused in different segments of our intervention, we design different programs. For example, we have the Energizing Education Program that is focusing on education. We have the Energizing Agriculture. We have the Africa Mini Grid. We have the National Public Solarization Initiative. So we design different programs to help us target specific number of intervention to be able to make sure that we are touching all segments of the Nigerian sector and the economy and the state. The third is also to make sure that we developed pipeline of talent, youth that are trained in renewable energy, for us to make sure that we are using this opportunity to create job opportunities. And we are currently implementing different programs. We have the next geners, about 131 youth that we just trained with the support of United Nations Development Program that have all been employed. We are also implementing the STEM program where we train in the initial level about 150 female youth and in 1,500 in all the universities that we deployed our infrastructure. The third strategy is sustainability, because one of the challenges of rural electrification or renewable project is that all the equipment have lifespan. So we plan with the end in mind, making sure that at the time the lifespan of this equipment come to an end, we have a framework that would ensure we put new equipment, the batteries, the inverters, the panels to continue to provide that service. The fifth strategy is the localization of manufacturing. We can't continue to import just like the Nigeria First policy of Mr. President, to continue to import the panels. Nigeria last year imported over 1.5 gigawatts of PV panels into the country. So we want to reverse that. We want to reverse the importation. We want to domesticate manufacturing and localization, and that is something that we are already doing. Before the coming of the Mr. President, with the capacity, the PV panel capacity manufacturing of Nigeria is just 120 megawatts, but currently we have a capacity generation of 650 megawatts and a pipeline of new project of over 3 gigawatts that is coming. On the 14th and 15th, the Honorable Minister is convening the first renewable summit that is taking place in Nigeria, where additional deals of over $1 billion, companies that have already started manufacturing, will be signed. The last strategy is the one to do with ensuring that we have a framework that incentivize the private sector. So that is why we created the RESCO, Renewable Energy Service Company, a portfolio of private sector, Nigerian private sector companies that we have incentivized to get debt or equity to take the public funding that we have to be able to also deploy this infrastructure and manage it across the country.
Mr. Aliyu,
so
isn't that the same?
That we are currently implementing.
Right. It sounds very good, but of course, you know, implementation is always a challenge. But this last strategy, isn't that the same with the second strategy, where you said you're using funding to incentivize the private sector? What's the difference?
Yeah, so from the funding strategy that we are currently implementing, like I said, that we are very clear that we know the government cannot address this challenge alone. We have to have the private sector funding. So what we are doing is all the funding that we have, rather than to just be issuing contracts, we say, now, let's also use the funding that we have to catalyze additional private sector funding so that we will be able to have more funds to deploy this infrastructure. And I give you an example. The $750 million that we have, we are using it to incentivize additional 1.1 billion private sector funding. So rather than just using 750 to deploy this infrastructure, we will now have the opportunity to use 1.850 billion to deploy this infrastructure to provide the 17.5 million Nigerians with the electricity access. The same thing with the funding that we are expecting from JICA and the FD, the French Development Agency. It will all be used to catalyze private sector. Even the 100 billion that Rural Electrification Agency that has secured under the 2025 budget, that 100 billion is to be used for the incentivize to as a means of getting private sector funding of about 500 billion. In future, we want to make Rural Electrification Agency as an agency that will continue to deploy infrastructure without even recourse to the country's balance sheet or public funding.
Right. So I hear that you're expecting some funding from the World Bank. How true is that?
Yes, so the $750 million that we have secured is from the World Bank. That is the first thing that Mr. President approved for us. But even now we are in further discussion with the World Bank, because we now also believe that for us to address the entire challenge of electricity, there's need to focus on the distribution network. And we are now designing with the World Bank a new framework approved by Honorable Minister for intervention in the distribution network. And very soon we'll come up with that framework. Also, all this, it's the funding that we secured from the World Bank.
All right, so since you took over as Managing Director, to our first conversation and our last conversation, and now, what percentage of rural Nigeria currently has access to reliable electricity? And I'm also wondering, Mr. Aliyu, how do you measure access? Is it just availability or also affordability and reliability? How do you do that?
So it's both. It's creating access, it's creating reliability, it's also making sure that it's affordable. The reason why we use renewable energy is because of ensuring reliability and affordability. So I give you a typical example. Most of the rural areas, their consumption level is very low. It's not much. So why should the government not adopt the most economically viable means of providing this electricity? If I'm to build 1 kilometer of transmission network, it will cost public funds of about $1 million. And why should you build this long transmission network and distribution network and transformer to provide a community that maybe the offtake is less than 1 megawatt? So the essence, the strategic essence of the approach we are adopting is to ensure that we are using the most least cost or the most efficient way of providing electricity in this community. So we go to this community, we deploy the generation plant, we build distribution network, we do the metering, we put the SCADA, the data system, and we provide them with this electricity, rather than we have to extend the grid or make them to rely on the grid. So that is the essence of that. And by doing that, one, we ensured reliability, because during the day they use the panels to get their electricity. During the night we deploy batteries. The batteries provide them with the electricity. And secondly is because renewable energy is cheaper. The cost, it's not contingent upon the cost of gas. Once we deploy this infrastructure, what it requires is just operation and maintenance costs. So normally the tariff tends to be a bit lower in some communities. Then the reliability is the fact that this distribution, generation distribution, is all within one particular community. And that makes it very easy to provide them with this electricity. To even show you the reliability level now, we are now working with the distribution companies to deploy interconnected mini grids, which is our own way of supporting the DISCO to create reliability for those communities that enjoy less than 4 hours. And like I told you, currently we are working in deploying 42 interconnected mini grids that will inject 188.4 megawatt of electricity into the grid. This is ensuring this reliability for even the grid, not even the communities that are isolated.
So if at 65 years old, we're still talking about lack of electricity in Africa's most populous nation, it means there's a fundamental challenge, and I'm sure you agree with me. And that was why I wanted you to assess Nigeria's progress in rural electrification over the last 65 years. And I wanted you to do that because you were head of the project management unit at the Nigeria Electrification Project, General Manager of Corporate Services, Projects and Research, and Deputy General Manager at Nigeria Bulk Electricity Trading PLC. So from these experiences, Mr. Aliyu, what are the biggest challenges facing rural electrification in Nigeria today? Is it funding? Is it infrastructure, policy, or local resistance? What exactly were the challenges, or still the challenges today?
To me, I haven't seen it all. I've been working in the sector for quite some time. This is, I think, like 12 or 13 years that I've been in the sector. I think to me, it's leadership. And that is why I told you in the first 65 years, I agree, we shouldn't be speaking about access or reliability at this level. But previously, there was never any concrete leadership to address this challenge. This is the first time that we are having that. And I told you the current one program that we are implementing, the DES project, is the biggest publicly funded renewable energy in the entire world. And this is just to show you, as in the audacity of Mr. President, most of the projects that is being implemented under his leadership are audacious projects that are big, that are designed to address the challenge once and for all, so that we move to another challenge. And that is why this DES project was designed and funding was provided. This is the first time that we said, let's pick 17.5 million under just one project to provide them with electricity in just 3 years. This is the first time, and this is really a commendable thing that we have seen from the Honorable Minister and Mr. President in that regard. And it's reality. The numbers are there. We are, like I said, we are deploying 42 interconnected mini-grids. We signed grant agreement for 254 isolated mini-grids that we are deploying. We have deployed mini-grid in 15 institutions, 12 megawatt in just one institution. And all these institutions are there and enjoying the electricity. We have deployed containerized mini-grids in hundreds hospital, different health institutions across the country. And it's there, it's working. People can go and verify. So leadership is what has not been there before. And this is time we are getting the leadership, we are getting the drive, the direction, and the support. Even if there is funding, which in the last 65 years, there must have been funding. But without the leadership and the support, it wouldn't have been. That is why we're still
even if there was leadership and support, Mr. Aliyu, even if there was leadership and support, yes, it was alleged that some persons stole money meant for some of this infrastructural projects. Am I correct?
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. But the leadership is what makes us to now change the entire framework. Before, even if there is funding for real electrification agency, it's just to be used to issue contracts, give different contracts, and that is it. But now we are saying that we can't continue to do that. When we have the funding, we want to dilute it. We want to bring private sector and we want to incentivize the private sector to go and do it. So that change of approach changed the entire dynamics and changed everything. So even with the funding, without the leadership, that wouldn't have been done. And we see also the audacity to make sure that the funding comes in large chunk to give comfort to the private sector that we are in here from the government side to support it for a long run and to address the electricity access challenge.
Yeah, because you have asked Nigerians to go and verify. That was why I asked you the last question about the number of percentage of rural Nigeria currently with reliable electricity. But the last time you were on Politics Tonight, which you have in fact reiterated tonight, you said increased electrification rates will be achieved with both conventional and renewable energy sources, the latter with on-grid and off-grid applications. You're spoken about it, so I wouldn't want us to go there. So for the benefit of those who would want to verify, because truly Nigerians are monitoring, which regions or states have seen the most improvements in recent years?
I would say in all the regions. I'm sure you must have seen the way Rural Electrification Agency is engaging with all the state governors to make sure that we have even development across all the states in the country. To date, we have had engagement with 19 state governors, and we made it compulsory that in all our engagement, we want the entire executive of the state to come. We bring the private sector and the funders, and we show the mapping that we have done. Because we now have as data all the communities within Nigeria that are without electricity. We know the communities, we know the number of households, we know the number of people, we know the least means of providing this community of with electricity. So to make sure that each region, each part of the country equally gets its own share of development, and in addressing the electricity access challenge, we partner, we leverage on the Electricity Act that was approved and signed by Mr. President. We leverage on that to partner with the state government to make sure that also the states knows they have the responsibility of creating enabling environment for the private sector to take the grants from us and deploy the infrastructure. So I would say we are working almost everywhere, and I tell you this on record that Rural Electrification Agency, any state you go, you will see our work, you will see the work that we are doing, be it isolated mini grid or interconnected mini grid or a public sector solarization or a solar home system, or all in all the states, and that is what we will continue to do.
So if funding is no longer a challenge, policy is no longer a challenge, and it looks like infrastructure is no longer a challenge or will no longer be a challenge. So what tangible changes have you seen in communities that now have electricity access?
We're seeing a lot of changes within this community. There's no question around the ability of electricity to catalyze socio-economic development. It's no brainer. In all the communities that we have been, that we deploy this infrastructure, you will see change in terms of the small, medium, micro enterprises coming up from nowhere. You will see, in fact, one even information that we got in when we were reviewing the infrastructure we deployed at the university. A vice chancellor was saying that even non-academic staff, that the turnover, that is their attendance, improved because of an infrastructure we deploy in the university, because some of them will want to come and enjoy that electricity or charge their equipment before closing from work. This is to show you that electricity catalyzes economic development, creates job opportunities,
Absolutely.
and we are seeing it in all areas. And that is, we have all the records of that.
All right, so if we say policy is no longer a challenge, funding is no longer a challenge, infrastructure is no longer a challenge, I'm sure you know how challenging is it to maintain, and I mean the issue of maintenance and sustainability. So how is your agency addressing those issues, especially in off-grid areas? What has the agency learned from past projects or where systems failed or underperformed due to lack of maintenance?
Yeah, so a very good question. So we have two different approaches of ensuring sustainability. One is the first level of the approach is the fact that in all the infrastructure that we deploy, we deploy it with the private sector, and we make sure that the private sector have their own funding. So they have skin in the game to make sure that we tie or we marry that private sector with that project for a very long period of time. Like I told you, we only incentivize the private sector. So if private sector will require to get equity or debt or equity to deploy that infrastructure. So after deploying that infrastructure, that private sector will make sure that that infrastructure is working over a period of time for them to get back their debt or get their equity and even get a predetermined internal rate of return. So that's the first way of ensuring sustainability, by building it around the private sector. The second level is also the new initiative that the Honorable Minister of Power created, which is the creation of Renewable Asset Management Company. For all the public infrastructure that we deployed at the university, we are innovating this asset into this Renewable Asset Management Company because of two things. One, because the Renewable Asset Management Company will engage private sector who are specialized in operation and maintenance to manage this asset on behalf of the Asset Management Company. And the second level is that the Renewable Asset Management Company will use the balance sheet, the asset that it has, to get more private sector funding to continue to deploy more of the infrastructure. And that is why I told you that for financing, we have really gotten a way that we will continue to deploy the infrastructure not without recourse to government's balance sheet. So that is the second leg of it for the renewable asset. So the renewable asset management will now serve as the vehicle to ensure sustainability of all the government's EPC funded projects. And the private sector would ensure that they would do that. And even in the event a private sector failed to manage an asset, this renewable asset management company will serve as the insurance, would take over that asset, fix it, and continue to run it over a period of time. So this is the framework that we are implementing to ensure sustainability of all our deployed infrastructure.
All right, so let's go back to the issue of local resistance. I wanted you to address that challenge, or how the agency overcame that challenge, because the role played by local communities in sustaining these projects cannot be underestimated. But with the agency, how does your agency ensure that systems remain financially viable in some of those poor or rural communities where ability to pay is quite low?
I would say that we have not seen any resistance in all the communities that we have been to. And like I told you, we have deployed over 200 mini grids currently and working to deploy additional 254. Before going to any community, the project designing or the project development procedure will require us to first do community engagement. We cannot just go to community and start deploying infrastructure. No. In fact, our sustainability, the sustainability of our project starts with the way we do the community engagement. So we go to this community, inform them of the plan to deploy this infrastructure, agree on the tariff, agree on the metering, agree on all the whole thing, and make sure that also we create what we call the renews, that is renewable energy users cooperative society within this community. Based on that, we now deploy this infrastructure. And what we are even seeing for us is the reverse. We, rather than seeing resistance, we see a lot of acceptability. We go to communities, and I give you an example. I'd like to give you an example, factual example. We go to a community called Balanga in Gombe State, a community that has over 11,000 fertile land, community that's into wheat farming since the period of President Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. But they could not harness all the opportunities in that community due to lack of electricity. So the Gombe State governor, the Rural Electrification Agency, a United Nations Industrial Development Organization partnered together and to provide electricity of 620 kilowatt of electricity, 320 from a micro hydro, 300 from solar. So we did that. The acceptability we have seen in that community is to the extent that they gave me a traditional title. This is to them showing their own appreciation of what the federal government has done to them and the development partner and the state government. And this is almost in all the communities. You see people dancing, you see a ceremony when we go to commission our project. You see people even reporting the private sector in the event that they are slow in the deployment of the infrastructure. I tell you on record that what we are seeing is acceptance, no any resistance in this regard.
All right, that sounds very good, and I'm very happy to hear that. But you know, we're a policy-driven nation, and for that purpose, Nigeria has adopted a number of policies. You look at different programs and targets, which, you know, truthfully show a strong intention to advance access to electricity, especially in rural and off-grid areas. But since you became MD, tonight you've talked about how supportive government policy has been in accelerating rural electrification. But are there any policy reforms you would like to see?
Of course, when it comes to deployment of infrastructure across the country, there's also the politics part of it. But you see, one of the good things of having a Minister of Power who is financially oriented, and that is why, to beat around the politics, we designed the project around the private sector. So the private sector, we provide the data, we provide the grant to the private sector, and they are the one that determine where they want to go and deploy this infrastructure. So that is one way of going around the politics. And the second also is using data. Like I told you on record, we have mapped the entire country. For the first time, we know where all these communities are. And we use this data as a way to convince the politicians in terms of reason why we are citing a project in a particular area. Because the data tells you the number of households. So limited resources, rather than just to deploy the infrastructure based on politics, but let's deploy it based on maximum impact, based on what the data has provided. So this is the second. But in terms of what we will want to see different in the politics, it's one, it's engagement with the state. We are seeing a lot of also enthusiasm with the state. I must commend all the state governors, more especially those that we had already engaged and those that we have set dates for their engagement. I think currently we have about 22 state governors that already have committed. We either engage with them or plan to engage with them. We have seen their passion. We have seen them buying into our project. We have seen them working to convince the private sector to come to the state. So that is a very good thing for us. But we are also engaging with the regulator, the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, who regulates most of our work. We are engaging with them to change the mini-grid regulation. Rather than the cap of 1 megawatt that is currently at the federal regulation, we want it increased. Because we have seen that for us to address this challenge, we want to deploy more than 10 megawatts in some areas. And the cap currently prevent us from there without seeking special approval. All the 42 interconnected mini-grid, we have to seek special approval from the regulator. So we want that to also be changed and increased so that more big projects of 20, 30 megawatt can be deployed to make sure that we address the challenge once and for all.
And so based on your internal estimates, Mr. Aliyu, what is the total funding required to electrify, that's 25 million Nigerians by 2028? And still on your internal estimates, what is the total funding required to, I think that's the question, and are there any revenue generating models or public-private structure being explored to make your agency more financially sustainable? Because like you said, you cannot totally depend on government.
Oh, absolutely. And this is what I've all been saying, that all the project now that we are deploying are based on that framework, leveraging on private sector without recourse to the government balance sheet. It's on record. The Ministry of Finance Incorporated, the Rural Electrification Agency, the InfraCorp, and specifically the Budget Office. I must commend the Budget Office. We signed the first joint development agreement for the national public sector solarization. That is nothing other than leveraging on our asset to get 500 billion, to raise 500 billion from capital market. That is us moving away from the government funding, from the government balance sheet. That is one thing that we are doing. We also have signed the joint development agreement and offtake agreement this month between the Rural Electrification Agency and InfraCorp and Solage, a Danish PV manufacturing company. And for the first time, you will see a government agency crystallizing equity in $1 million company without paying any kobo. Rural Electrification Agency now owns 26% of the 1 gigawatt Solage InfraCorp RHI PV manufacturing plant. And we signed that based on the offtake that we will provide for the company. So now we create economic value for Rural Electrification Agency without spending a dime. And in the October event, you will see more of this engagement for us, creating market, creating manufacturing, creating job in Nigeria, and at the same time also creating value for federal government without spending money. All the framework that we are implementing now, it's a program, it's a framework channeled towards crystallizing private sector funding, crystallizing value without federal government funding or without recourse to the federal government's balance sheet.
I don't know if I should ask you this, but let me try. Because we're still talking about money and funding, are there steps the agency is taking to perhaps de-risk funding? I know you've talked about attracting new partners, but is the agency planning to possibly close the financing gap by 2030? Is it possible?
Yeah, very, very possible. We know that based on the National Electrification Strategy and Implementation Plan that we completed, we know the funding gap. We know to address the assets gap and create reliability, there is a need of about 23 billion based on our own estimate. And we know that we don't have up to that money, but
23 billion naira.
The current money we have.
Mr. Aliyu, 23 billion naira.
$23 billion. $23 billion US dollars is what is required to create the reliability and address the access challenge. And like I said, we don't have that money, but the little we have and the private sector financing we are crystallizing, at the same time also the capital market funding that we want to raise, and more assets, each asset that we create that is providing electricity for a government institution, for example, will still use that asset to raise more money to do it in another government institution. So we see ourselves still addressing the challenge with the current framework, even though we don't have up to the 23 billion US dollars, but we have a framework that would bring the private funding, the development finance institution funding grant to be able to address the gap.
So as we wrap up tonight, this is a question I have not asked you before. On a personal level, what drives your commitment to rural electrification in Nigeria?
Can you answer the question again?
Did you get that question? So I wanted to know what drives your commitment to rural electrification in Nigeria. This is on a personal level. Personally for you, what drives your commitment?
I think it's my passion for the work that I'm doing. I love the work that I'm doing. I'm passionate about it, and seeing the results also is something that gives me the energy continuously to do more and to continue to see that we are doing. And I also would like to put it on record, the support that I'm getting from my bosses. Mr. President appointed me, the Honorable Minister recommended me without knowing, without seeing me ever physically. So all this makes me to feel more indebted to them and to see that, yes, I proved to them that they did not make a wrong decision in that regard. And that is why we will continue to do that. Yeah.
Right. And as Mr. President said this morning, the worst is over. Yesterday's pains are giving way to relief. Nigerians are very hopeful. And clearly, access to electricity is more than just infrastructure. It's about equity, opportunity, and sustainable development. And from here, Mr. Aliyu, we wish you all the very best. Thank you so much for speaking with us tonight. Abba Aliyu is the Managing Director of the Rural Electrification Agency. Thank you so much for your time. Please have a great evening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Right. Thank you for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at 12:30 a.m. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumo KW using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News NG. I am Olajumo Olatunji. Good night, everyone.